making pot holders. And what I did was I had some different, I made a quilt for a baby, and not all of the blocks are baby prints, they're fish, and I had several left over. I love the whales, and I just, what am I going to do with the extras? So I thought, well, I can incorporate them into some pot holders. This would be cute. I use these on the table. I set them down and put pots, or mostly what I do is I use them for Christmas. In Thanksgiving, I put the meal in bowls, and we do family style, and I use these and put the bowls on top of them. Now, we're hooping 1 layer of no-show, 2 layers of Insulbrite, and Insulbrite is a heat, I think, retractive. It stops the heat from going through to your table. And I don't know if you could get away with 1 layer. You could make one for yourself as a sample and put 1 layer of Insulbrite because it's expensive, and then 1 layer of like Warm and Natural, one of the thicker battings that is very dense. And I've done that with several. So you test what you like. I'm not going to judge you. You do what you like. But for these gifts, I'm using 2 layers just to be on the safe side. You could even use a layer of batting in the center if you wanted to, but I think it's enough. But these are a little big to be pot holders, but they're kind of like trivets for the table. And just as a cook, because I cook all the time, I wouldn't really want to use these for pulling stuff out of the oven and stuff, because I'm always washing those. And I don't put a little hook, a little loop. I don't do that because I don't hang stuff in my kitchen. That reminds me of the 50s, 60s, 70s. I used to hang pot holders in my kitchen. Now they're in the drawer. Put the little tab, but you could easily just take an inch or inch and a half piece of fabric, fold it in half, iron it, open it up, bring the 2 sides towards the center, iron, and fold it in half again, iron, and then sew, make a belt loop and sew down the side. Then you would just put 1 here, loop it here, but do it on the inside, then put your top on. So we're doing this pretty much all in the hoop. We've got, like I said, 1 layer of no-show, 2 layers of Insulbrite. I did find Insulbrite. I have a whole bunch for these projects. And this one I have not closed up yet because I was going to show you that. But everything I've done in the hoop, the next step we're going to do is we're going to go through and I'm going to show you how to create this so that we can sew it out. Okay, so we've got everything in the hoop. We're going to hit IQ Designer or Design Center if you're on a Brother. Go up to the scanning and hit scan and OK. Make sure that your fabric doesn't catch on the foot. Since this wasn't made for pot holders, and it was made for the baby quilt that I was doing, and it was an extras, and I'm like, well, this will make a great pot holder. So it's not as large as I use when I'm doing a pot holder or a mug rug or any of that stuff, because you can use this for mug rugs too. We're doing a pot holder. I would have this about 1 inch bigger all the way around on the outside so that I could trim it down. That way their stuff doesn't catch. Plus I have plenty of fabric when I need to turn it inside to slip stitch it up or sew around. Okay, so after it scans, I wish I'd just moved my machine somewhere easier, but you can see that it's very hard to see the fabric after I scan it. So I'm going to go ahead and make it darker, fill the picture in better by using the arrow key here. If you go back down, that takes it, you can go all the way to where you don't see a background, but I want to see the background pretty clearly to do this step. I do not want an outside line, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say no outside line, and then I'm going to collect the circle and the hoop button here, and I want a square. Okay, I want this square to be the size of the square with the seahorses. I want to change the size, so I clicked size, and right now I can go all 4 sides in. This button takes it all in. This button makes it larger going out. This one makes it larger on top and bottom going out, or sides going out. This makes it going smaller towards the inside, smaller towards the inside, top and bottom. This is side to side, and this is all 4. So I'm just going to do all 4 at the moment and get it kind of close to the size that I need. We're going to, just keep playing with it. Once it looks like it's around the size I need, I want it to match up with the outside lines. So I'm going to take my stylus and I'm just going to move it. Now it just needs a tiny bit more to come in on the sides here. So I'm going to click on that button, and that looks pretty good to me. If I want to even it up on either side a tiny bit, I might use these keys move. You see that moving? These will take it back to center if I hit the middle, and I want it to go up now to the top, and I want it to align pretty close. I do need to bring it in a tiny bit on the sides. Now that looks pretty good. Okay, for the next step, I'm going to hit OK. We're going to need to bring the image down because we won't see the next part. I contrast all the way up. You can see your background design. So if I went in right now and do the next step, I'll show you. I'm going to take the contrast. This is what it's normally set at, is that second bar. I'm going to leave it there for the moment. The next step after I bring the contrast down is I'm going to click on the paint fill, and I'm going to get the Stippling Stitches, which is right here, and I'm just going to say yellow because it's bright, and I want it in the center, so I'm going to click center and it shows up. Now if you forget to bring the contrast down, you're not going to see it, and you're going to think, oh, what is going on? My machine's not doing anything. Before you start putting your fills in, do the contrast stitch. Here you can also see if you don't have it done to the right size, you can clear it back out. You can hit the arrow that takes it away, but you're also going to have to go back and redo the size. You'd have to hit it twice. Now I can resize this just a tiny bit. I think it needed to go like this. So if you see that it's off a little bit, which it doesn't bother me because nothing I ever do in life is perfect. So I'm going to drop the paint bucket. I'm going to drop the stitches back in there. The next thing I want to do is I want to fill this outside section. So I'm going to basically do the exact same thing. I'm going to click on the square circle. I'm going to pick the square again. I know that I want this square to be 7.48. I believe is the size I use. So I'm going to go size. Then I'm going to use the bigger all out. And up here is where you can see the size. And I'm thinking it was 7. No, it's not 7. It's 8. I want it to be 8.48. Now, normally I would do it as big as I possibly could in the hoop. But let's do 8.45. But the reason I can't on this is because this square is a set size. Pot holders, as I've said, are for laying on the table, or some people are going to use them to grab pots out of the microwave and stuff. I use them on the table so that it doesn't scorch my table when I set. Even, when you're at Thanksgiving and you have the big bowls of food you set out in the middle of the table for family size, I use these for that. And so I normally want them like 10 by 10, but the best size for me right here was 8.5 or so. And since I want extra material on the outside of I want extra material here on the outside so that I can do this inside out pot holder without having to do binding, I do want a little bit of fabric. Now, normally I would like a good inch, 1/2 inch to 1 inch, but I don't have that option, and I'm being frugal. I'm trying to use up my stuff that I've spent time creating. Now I want to fill this outside square, and I I'm going to say okay because I like the size. Now remember the size was 8.45. That's important, 8.45. With my memory, I usually will keep a pad near my sewing machine and a pen, and I will write 8.45. Do any of you have these white spools, white cones of thread? If you do, and everybody asks this, when you go to take off the labels, they don't always come off cleanly. This one did. When they come off cleanly, I take them and I smooch them up inside and I push them down. But I also, before I ever take them off, I write the number on the edge. And I used to do it up here too, but I don't care as much anymore. People want to follow somebody's embroidery design exactly to the colors. I do not. But the reason I was doing it was because I had both my Destiny and my Dream Machine running. So if I was doing the same design on both machines, I wanted 2 spools of thread. So every color thread I ever bought, I bought 2 of. And that's why I did the numbers on them. It was very important. Well, and the other part of that is when that thread gets low, you want to know what number to replace. Okay, so to get this outside in, we're going to take and push on the bucket again and push on the button that takes us to the quilting function. And I love this design right here. So I want that one. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to leave it yellow. Well, let's change the color. Let's change the color to pink. Okay? And drop it in. So now we have everything in here. Now we're going to hit next. And here is where, if this is on, that outside line up there is going to sew out. I want it off, so I've set it to off. Then here, if you click on these buttons, it takes you through everything. This is the stippling. If you want to make it so that the run is lower, you would click on that and then change it. I like it on 80 for this project, so I just leave it alone. This, I believe, is the spacing key. Yes, spacing key. You can change the size of the spacing. I like the spacing the way it is, so I'm going to cancel and just leave it at 0.2. And this one is the distance of the spacing, so you can change it. When you change this, when you hit preview, it'll show you. You'll look and see what everything you've done looks like. If you don't like it, you hit return, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this back to 0.008. And here's the one that shows up better. If this is at spacing at 0.2 and I made it larger, let's show you what that does. This is going to change. Now, you can see it now. I think I'm looking at you can barely see it. I should have done this in a deeper color, but if you don't like the way it looks, go back to return and change it back. I want it to go back to the 2.0. That's what I like. On this part, I'm just going to return, let it set. On this part, I like to leave it. I like the way this looks. I like the way it sews out, but play with those numbers and look at it or make samples and see how you like it. All right, so we're back to where we just finished making the design. We hit next. If we hit this arrow key, it takes us through the different sections. Like right now we're on the pink. So these circles, if I needed to change anything, that's where we change it. For the stippling, the yellow, we change it. And then this is that outer line. I turned it off. So we're going to hit preview, say OK. And now we're at the point, this is what's going to sew out. So I like that. So I'm going to say set, and I'm going to say OK. Then I want to make this into a pot holder, and I want these to sew out. But let's add this. Remember we said 8.45 is the size of this pot holder? What we're going to do now is we're going to pick up the circle and the square and get us a square and say OK. And we're going to size it to 8.45. which is right here. Right there. Come on, little one. 8.45. And we're going to say OK. And then we're going to take and we're going to choose the running stitch. And let's grab, let's say dark purple. And I think it already does it, but if it didn't change, you would click on it with your stylist and it would change the color. I don't think it changes. I think it just automatically does it. Let me put yellow there. So when I change the color to yellow, I'm on the bucket, so I would touch the line and it changes it to yellow. So now I know that that's set in yellow. Let's say I want purple, so I go back and I put it in purple. The colors are just color stops and changes for you. It doesn't matter what colors you choose. I'm only choosing colors so that it's different so we can see it. All right, so now that's going to sew out and it's going to be that triple stitch. So this is going to be a pot holder. After I sew out the first part, I'm going to take a piece of fabric and set it on top, and I'm going to sew it around and cut away the extras and turn it right side out. If I do not do this next step, we're not going to be able to turn it right side out without cutting something. So what we're going to do is get the eraser, and this one's fine. I'm going to say OK. Then I'm going to go, well, let's just do it here. I'm going to go and look. I've got a line here. I've got my my background set where I have the my mind has gone blank, but I have the lines, the graphs. So I see I've got 1, 2 lines, 1, 2 lines. I think I'm going to go into the third line here with my eraser, and then I'm going to go across and I'm going to erase the bottom part of this line to the third line here. Doesn't matter if it's how big it is. It doesn't have to be exact, but I want at least about 1 inch or 2 from the corner and 1 inch or 2. This is just like when you've made square pillows, you leave that opening so you can turn it. So by taking the eraser and removing from this line to this line, we've removed those stitches. So now it'll start, go around, come back, go around, tie off, and we will have an open space here. Okay? We're going to say next. There's nothing on this I want to change. I don't want to change the stitch or anything whatsoever. So I'm going to hit preview. I'm going to say OK. Then I'm going to set it. Then that's going to make it so that first it's going to sew out the pink, which is the outside area. Then it's going to sew out the yellow. Then it's going to sew out the purple, which is the final line. All right? So I'm going to hit embroidery, and this is all good to me. So next we're going to sew it out. I'm going to start the sewing. I got to change the thread, and I'll be back in just a minute. Everything has sewn out. Both of those sewn, and you can see it's not perfect. If I would have spent more time, it probably would be, but it goes a little bit into the center and a little bit out, but who's going to know besides us? The people we give this to have no idea what we're doing. And now if you wanted to put the little tab on it to hang it, I would set it right in here and I'd have it extended past and put a little tab, tape it down. Then what we're going to do is take backing fabric, and you would want this, I like these to be bigger than what I need. This is a 10-inch square from a layer cake. But normally I'd probably cut 11 or 12-inch piece of fabric, but I'm being a little frugal, and actually I'm being a little lazy. So after you sew out all your designs, you're going to take whatever backing fabric you want, and you're going to lay it so that it's on top. And the opening that we've made, you can make the opening for turning on top, on the side, or on the bottom. I chose the bottom. So I know that I want more fabric on the bottom than the top, and I know that my stitching is down a little bit. So I'm going to place this strategically so that I have enough fabric up here, After I pull this out of the hoop, I'm going to cut away all this fabric and the Insulbright. So that's not a big deal. As long as I've got enough that my stitches cover this, I'm fine. So I'm going to make it so that I have more fabric down here than I do up here. Put it back on my machine. Last step that we sew is the outside square with the opening that we created. And I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to let it start sewing. The thread that I used for the stippling and for all of this basically is variegated. I love variegated thread. My dream machine did not like Metro thread when I first bought it. I don't know what I did to change. It was the new Oregon needles. I don't know what it was, but after a year of using it, it's now. So if yours will work with Metro thread, it's very, to me, it's kind of inexpensive. I think, I'm not positive, it's Metro embroidery, and it's, I do a Google search, Metro embroidery, but I think it's metroemb.com. It's either that or it's metroembroidery.com. For, I think this is like $50, and you get 50, so that'd be $1 a cone, and they're variegated. Some of them are harder to see than others for the color changes, but that's a pretty good buy. The other place that I buy a lot of variegated thread is from Long Creek Mills. It's a place in North Carolina that I've gone to for years, and their thread would be much, I buy the 5K cones, and this one I love because it's red, white, and green for Christmas. But with Long Creek Mills, if you don't see what you want, their website's kind of, it's not the best, because it's a little mill, it's a little store. Prices are still good, and they sell variegated, and I think these are some that I've gotten from him, and what you get from him, you really can't say, I want this brand, I want that brand. They go by color, but everything I've gotten from him is usually name brand, and it's North Carolina where a lot of the stuff is milled, so they are where they can buy direct and save a bunch of money and pass it on to you. And I do know that on their website, the last time I bought some variegated thread from them, they did have a little thing that was where you could choose variegated thread. If you don't see what you want on their website or what you need, call them, because you can call them if you don't see what you want on their longcreekmills.com. I've been preaching about them for years because I love them, you know, and I'm not affiliated. I don't get anything from anyone. I don't sell for anyone. I don't get any kickbacks. I don't get any commissions. I don't get anything. It's just if I find a place that I like, I tell you about it. But I've been, you know, thinking about these pot holders. I made them 2 or 3 years ago as Christmas gifts. What I did back then was I found Christmas material from that was printed with different design squares, like what are they called? Panels. Now these aren't that big, so these are from, I think, the last project I did, leftovers. But what I did was I cut them kind of roughly to the size I wanted, and then I will add fabric on the top and bottom, cut it straight. I'd cut this off and make it square, and then add fabric after I do the top and bottom, or sides, either way. Then I would go ahead and trim them to be square again, or to be equal in length, then add top and bottom. So whichever side I did, if I did top and bottom, I'll trim them up so they're equal this way. Then I'll add the sides and then make it square completely so that I have something that looks like this. So when you're making a quilt if you make, sometimes I make more blocks than I need because I do testers. And I don't know about you, but I do a lot of this. When I do Anita Good Designs, I do a lot of testing blocks. And with Anita Good Design, everything would be done. I would have the design in the center. I'd have the quilting in the hoop. The only thing I wouldn't have would be a backing. So when you're doing your test block for Anita Good Design, use Insulbright instead of their batting, and don't trim it to be the size of the block. Leave it alone. With Anita Good Design, it'll say, you know, put your basting stitch down, your placement stitch, then you place your batting, then you trim it close after it sews the next stitch. Don't trim it, just leave it. Make it as big as you want the finished product to be, and then do all your borders and everything, and it'll be the same as this, only it will not be finished in the hoop. What you would do is you'd have the block would be sewn. If I had done an Anita, let's say I just finished doing a sample of Anita Good Design. Well, if I want to do it in the hoop, I just take a piece of fabric and I'd cover it and I'd scan it in. Well, I'd probably scan it in like we did, cover it, then just make my lines, remove part of the sewing lines, and tack down the backing fabric just like this, and go ahead and trim it up and have a pot holder. If you've taken them out of the hoop and they're sitting there, you know, just ready to be squared up, all you gotta do is put your backing fabric on and sew around it and leave an opening and make it a pot holder. So think about that. Instead of taking your all of your test stitches and stuff, instead of, you know, throwing them away, make projects like this. This is just plain fabric. My son is really into Star Wars, and this is a mug rug. It's not the normal size that you would use, but it's just I had a piece of fabric left over from something I was sewing up for him, so I just did exactly what I did there, except I did one square and did the stippling. Then I put the back on the top. I did the sewing around. Then I turned it right side out. So I've got another one sitting here for him that I did the same thing to. So it's in the hoop, and this is what it looked like. You know, there's a large piece. That's what I said. I do like it when I have the larger pieces of fabric. It hangs over. This will go into my scrap bin. So it is all ready. The opening is here on the side. I just got to take it out of the hoop. When I take it out of the hoop, I will take my ruler and I will lay it on this stitching line on the three sides that are completely sewn, and I will leave just a scant 1/4 to 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. I don't want too much. And then when I get to here, I will leave 1/2 inch to 1 inch, okay? So I'll leave 1/2 inch to 1 inch up on the top. I don't have my ruler and rotary cutter here, but I do have scissors. So what I'll do is I will go in, and if you don't have a rotary cutter and all that, you just take your scissors and go along the solid lines that are sewn and leave yourself, 1/8 to 1/4 inch, and trim away on all three sides. So let's do the three sides. Now if you have the rotary cutter and ruler, use it. Okay. When I get to here, I'm going to want to save that fabric, so then I'm going to go like this, because this fabric's going to go in the trash. Alright. This fabric I want to save because it's a bigger piece. If you're like me, you have a bunch of, I use those, I used to call them Tupperware bins, but they're not. You know the ones you go to Sam's, Walmart, and you buy the big plastic bins with the cover? I have a ton of those. And I put all my Christmas scraps in one, all of my planes in another, and then I have littler ones for when I have scraps that are like strips, not pieces. Like these two bigger pieces, they'll go in the scrap bin right there. This I will save, and it goes in the one down here. Alright, so now I've cut away the 3 sides. Something else I will do is I will take a little tiny bit away from the corners. You know, do that little tiny angled cut at the corners just by going like this. Don't cut into your stitches. Okay, so on the top, what I want to do is I do want fabric left so that when I turn it right side out, I have it. I don't need this fabric, so I'm just going to cut this away, the stabilizer. Okay, so this is the opening where I'm going to turn it. What I will do is I come at least a ½ inch in, and I cut down, and I leave right here on the edge. I do about a 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch. I do it about the same all the way around. Then I cut that the corner right here. Okay. Now on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go about ½ inch over and cut this away. I don't like to leave all this stuff on my floor because I've got the big dogs that'll eat it. Then I'm going to take this corner off. Now, if I had my rotary cutter, I would turn these back, the fabric, and you have the batting. I will take the batting and I will cut it flush with the 1/8 to an inch to a 1/4 inch that I've left. So it'll be about the same, but I'll leave the fabric. So I've cut away the batting so it's even. But this, now this is a little more than I really need, so let's just take it down a tiny bit. The reason you want this is it makes it easier to sew up. It'll go in your sewing line. Okay, so after we've done all that trimming and we've taken the edges of our corners off, that helps them to point out. Then you stick your little finger in here and you go to the back. Now this one does not have Insulbrite because this is just a mug rug. The others have Insulbrite because they're pot holders, and he knows what this is. I've already told him. I should have made them with Insulbrite because he'd like the pot holders better. But I poke my little finger through all the corners. Okay. Just like this. There. Now it looks like this. Now I have this. If you have a thingamajig, do I know where my thingamajig is? A thingamajig is similar to this. Purple thang. It's a purple thang. I don't know where I got this. I bought it at one event or another. But the purple thang, I try to keep it in this, I don't know that I've ever actually used it. I got it a couple years ago. But the purple thang is for poking out the corners and stuff. Oh, heck with it. It's popular, so you might have it, but it's plastic, and let's see, what's it say? It's by Lynn Graves, That Purple Thang, T-H-A-N-G. This is a ribbon through slot, wear it around your neck, so you'd put a ribbon through the slot so you can wear it around your neck. Pull-in type stuff where you have, for lace, you have the holes and you want to go in and out, in and out. You can put ribbon in here and you can go like this and go through, or you use it to push your corners out. There's a pointy end and then there's the square end. So there's that option, or you can use a screwdriver with I like the Phillips head. And I always keep that because anytime something breaks up here, I have to take this off to clean it out. So got a screwdriver, got the purple thing. The newest one that I have, I bought last 6 months ago or so. I went to a Jenny Haskins event. Don't know what this is called, but I'm sure if you look on her website, you might find it. It's metal. I love this. It's metal. It's not real heavy, but it's not really light. And it has a rounded end and then this end. But you use this to poke your corners out. But hey, you know what? If you're on a budget, that screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, works just as well as any of these little toys. I try not to. I have a lot of toys because I get hooked on things when I'm seeing them displayed and shown how to use. I get all, ooh, I want that. And then, like this thing, I bought that in an event, and this was it's made in Pennsylvania. I think I bought it on the cruise. Maybe that's where I bought it. I've had it a good 2 to 3 years. I've never used it. I just now opened it. So after we turn it right side out, the reason I left that fabric on the top there, after I turn any of these pot holders, this is exactly the same thing because it hasn't been sewn up. When I turn these out, and this one's been cut to do the same thing, I leave the extra fabric so that when you do this part and you start messing with it to seal this up, you see how easy that was? I put my finger and I kind of push the fabric. It covers up that little scant 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch that we left for a seam, and it covers it up, and then you pull it. I would take it, and I don't have the iron plugged in, but I would probably do exactly like I just did with my fingers, and I would hold it exactly how I want it, turn here, and just take my iron, and then I might very well lift this up a little bit and put the nose of my iron in there. So when you're at this point, what I do, you have two choices. If you're like me, you're going to take my favorite choice. I'm just going to change my machine, and I'm going to turn it to sewing, and I'm going to say okay, move that embroidery unit. So this one's already been ironed, and you see it's got turned in. Now this is the only area that you really have to be cautious about, because you want enough fabric here turned under that it catches in your sewing line so it stays closed. If you've done something silly, which I have, and cut too much fabric off, then take a little bit of that stitchery or stitch witchery or a piece of Wonder Under and put that in there, and then iron it down and seal it up a little bit. Or take a needle and thread, tie a knot, put your needle in here, and then do a whip stitch until you're done. Or do what I'm going to do here. I'm going to start right here for sewing, because that's the important part to keep covered. And so I'm just using the same thread, probably not, but I'm just using a similar thread. But I'm going to start right at the beginning where that opening is, just a tad bit to the north of it. And I'm going to do maybe 1/8 of an inch in. And I'm going to give it a little tiny back stitch just for reinforcement. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew straight down. And what this does is it's completely sewing, encasing the fabric and everything, so I don't have to hand stitch that. Then I'm going to, when I'm at about the same 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to turn, stop and turn. I love the new pivot feature. That's the one thing I really missed when I sold my Husqvarna. It's the only thing I missed about that Husqvarna. And then I'm going to pivot. I will sew to where I'm almost 1/8. You know, I like to be kind of close every time. And then sew down. If it catches like that, just push with your finger. Sew down. And it's really thick. This does have the 2 layers of it's Insulbright, so it is really thick. So the machine makes, you know, you can hear it when you're doing your stitches. It's not like sewing a couple of layers of cotton. All right, and then I'm almost back to where I started. So I sew down to, I'm going to go a little tiny bit past that, and sometimes I even go all the way to the other end, and then I'm going to back stitch a tiny bit, and that be it. So now we have a pot holder, and you can start with the making of this and be done, oh gosh, in an hour. Designer probably takes 10 minutes, if that, and then sewing it out is 10 or 15 minutes, so an hour. And one thing that I have done is now this one, with the specific, yeah, see, you see that there's an opening, but it's sewn. You could also do a slip stitch. I probably like the slip stitch better, but I'm lazy. But the this one having the specific cutout, I didn't really save, but you can go ahead. When I was doing like the Star Wars and I knew I wanted it a specific size, I went ahead and I would save them in my memory, or I would save them in my USB. So you can save it. Something that I did save is that outline, that both of these were the same size, so I saved that outline so I didn't have to do it more than once. And that'll help you. Like if you're doing a bunch of these pot holders and you know that they're all going to be, you can't go over 9.5 with the hoop that we have, but you could do, let's say 9.45. So a 9.45 inch square, you know, you use your 9.5 hoop, and or even do an 8x8, because this is probably a little big. So an 8x8 would be fine. It would be 7.75 by 7.75. And if you've done the update, if you have the Dreamweaver, the Unity, the Dream Creator, and I'm thinking the VE220, all of those have the new hoop. The first upgrade gave you an 8x12 and an 8x8 hoop. If you don't have that on any of those machines, you want to buy that one, because it also gives you an 8x8 and an 8x12 hoop. You don't get the ability to do the design center like I do, but you can buy quilted designs. Embroidery Library has a ton of you can get, you know, most of theirs are 7.75 or right in that area. So once you have that 8.8 hoop, you can buy their quilted designs, and you can enlarge it a tiny bit, and you can do the exact same thing without being so specific with the center and then the outside. So think about that kind of stuff. Alrighty, see you on the next video.